The time has finally come to figure out when the double and blank game weeks are going to be between now and the end of the season and start planning our chip strategies. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan and this might be the most important video you watched so far this season. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing as I do every year and try and explain to you how the blank and double game weeks are going to work between now and the end of the season, so you guys can start coming up with your own chip strategies. But I also do have a suggestion for you guys as well of what might work for, I think, most people. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the key dates between now and the end of the season, and everything that you need to know will happen between these game weeks, Game Week 24 and Game Week 38. So the key information starts in the 31st of January and it's going to work all the way up to the 26th of May, technically the 25th of May. So this is our calendar. You can see all the dates in here. We have divided each little set of dates into the weekend and the midweek, and that's going to be very important when we're trying to figure out what can go where. The weekend is being defined as Friday to Monday and the midweek is defined as Tuesday to Thursday. We've also got an international break between the 18th and 27th of March, so we need to think about that as well, and the season will end after the 25th of May. So let's start having a look at what the rest of the season looks like and where the doubles and blanks are going to be and what we can do with that information. So here are the game weeks. 24 starts in the weekend of the 1st of February technically, so that is going to be a normal game week. We don't need to worry too much about that, but we will start adding things to this shortly. We also see Game Week 26 and 27 both happen in the same calendar week. So 2 game weeks in a short period of time there in Game Week 26 and Game Week 27. Game Week 30 is also going to be a midweek game week, so just be aware of that one. It's going to be a bit of a strange deadline there. But everything else, we're all starting at the weekends. Everything else is a weekend game week. Now we do also, in addition to the international break this season, see several what I'm calling cup breaks where the football is maybe postponed for a little while, maybe a week, for the cup ties to take place. So between Game Week 24 and 25, we're going to have a cup break for the FA Cup in that weekend. We've got another one from the 28th of February between Game Week 27 and Game Week 28. And there's another cup break just after the international break that's going to take place within Game Week 29, just before Game Week 30 begins. The final cup game time for the FA Cup is going to be within Game Week 34. The FA Cup semi-finals will take place in Game Week 34. So something to be aware of again. But it's not the only cup going on. We also have the League Cup, the EFL Cup, the Carabao Cup, whatever you want to call it. And the second leg of the semi-finals is going to take place during Game Week 24 in the midweek slot there. And also the EFL Cup final is going to take place within Game Week 29. More on that to come because that is going to be very, very important towards our strategies. We also have to consider when the European games are, Champions League, Europa Conference League as well. There are designated midweek slots for these European fixtures to take place. That's going to happen in the cup break after Game Week 24, within Game Week 25, the cup break between Game Week 27 and 28, another one in 28, 31, 32, 34, 35, and we see the Europa League final is going to take place within Game Week 37 in that midweek slot. So you can see already, guys, this calendar is starting to get a little bit busy, and actually there's not too many midweek slots available for any potential double game weeks to appear in. The only 3 slots as of looking at this graphic is within Game Week 33 and in Game Week 36. These are the only midweek periods where there are no Premier League games and no cup games currently scheduled. So Game Week 29, you may have heard already that this could be a blank game week. Well, it is going to be a blank game week for 4 teams in the Premier League. And basically what we know is any team that reaches the EFL Cup final will have a blank game week in 29 because there is a clash here both the Premier League and the League Cup final will be taking place during the same weekend. So if you're in the League Cup final, you will be unavailable to play in the Premier League for that weekend. So it will be the two finalists of the EFL Cup, and whoever they were due to play in Game Week 29, their fixtures will be postponed. They will not take place in Game Week 29, therefore giving them a blank game week. However, where we do have bad news for Game Week 29 for these teams, there is also some good news. Because I am predicting, and we're 99% sure about this because it makes so much sense with the scheduling for the Premier League, these fixtures will be moved into Game Week 33, creating a medium-sized double game week. The 4 teams that blank in Game Week 29 should, in theory, have their fixtures moved into Game Week 33 to create a double game week. Remember, Game Week 33 midweek is free. There are no scheduled games from any competitions in that midweek period, so it makes perfect sense for the Premier League to move any fixtures that cannot be played within Game Week 29 into Game Week 33. So there's your first blank game week, there's your first double game week. And we can give a little more information on this one. We do have some information as the first legs of the League Cup semi-finals have already taken place. Newcastle are 2-0 up on Arsenal and Spurs are 1-0 up to Liverpool. However, Spurs do still have to go to Anfield for that second leg. So these are the current odds for the League Cup final. Newcastle versus Crystal Palace, they have an 84% chance of blanking in Game Week 29 according to current bookmakers odds, and therefore a 84% chance of doubling in Game Week 33. Both Newcastle and Crystal Palace. We have Aston Villa versus Liverpool with a 62% chance of a blank in 29 and a double in 33. At Fulham, 38% chance of a blank in 29 and a double in 33. And Arsenal and Chelsea, the least likely to blank and double in Game Week 29 and Game Week 33, respectively. Of course, we will have this information by the time we pass the Game Week 24 deadline, because in the midweek of Game Week 24, that is when the EFL Cup semi-final second leg games take place. And after Game Week 24, before Game Week 25's deadline, we will know for sure who will be blanking in Game Week 29 and who will be doubling in Game Week 33. So that's going to be great information, but at this moment, we are just making predictions on which teams specifically will be blanking and doubling. With the FA Cup, it's a little bit more tricky, but let me tell you how it's going to work. So in Game Week 34, we're going to have the biggest blank game week of the season, and that's because of the FA Cup semi-finals. There will be 4 teams in the semi-final. If all 4 of them are Premier League teams, well, whichever 4 teams they are due to play in Game Week 34 will also blank. But of course, whilst there is a maximum of 8 teams blanking in Game Week 34, which is the biggest blank of the season, like I said, there is a good chance that it is less than that. For example, we could see multiple teams who make it through to the semi-finals, and maybe multiple teams were due to play against each other within Game Week 34 anyway. Of course, there is the chance that we might see a few lower league teams make the semi-finals as well. So there's lots of different possibilities. I think 8 blanks is the most likely scenario, but we could see less than that as well. We could see 6 teams blanking very, very feasibly. So it's not necessarily going to be enormous. It's not going to be as big of a blank game week as we've seen in previous seasons, but it is still the most significant one and the one we need to think about the most when we're looking at what players we might not have available. So just to reiterate, the FA Cup semi-finalists will blank in Game Week 34 along with any teams they were due to play in Game Week 34, according to my predictions based on the scheduling right now. So let's move on again with blanks come doubles, and the double would be in Game Week 36, that other free midweek slot. So if you blank in Game Week 34, you are going to double in 36. Right now, we're mostly before the FA Cup third round, so we don't know for sure who is going to be making it all the way to the semi-finals. Still quite a long time before we'll find that out. However, I should say that we will know before the game week 30 deadline, because that is when the quarterfinals take place. So before the game week 30 deadline, we will have the information of who will blank in game week 34 and who will double in 36. Now, just to add a little bit more onto this, there is a chance that some teams that are due to blank in game week 34 may be moved into the game week 33 double, although I think that is just a super unlikely to happen. There is obviously many different unique scenarios in which fixtures can be moved into slightly different areas, but in general, game week 29 is going to be a blank. We know that. Game week 34 is going to be a blank. We know that. How many teams exactly will be blanking in 34? How many teams exactly will be doubling in 33 and 36 is still somewhat of a mystery, but we can make educated guesses based on the information right now. What you need to know is the teams blanking in game week 29 will have their fixtures moved into game week 33, and the teams blanking in game week 34 will have their fixtures moved into game week 36. That is the most likely outcome from what we're going to see this season, and that does have some implications. And by the way, guys, if you do enjoy this video, make sure you do drop a like. It's taken a little time to put together with all of the predictions for the rest of the season and present it in a way which hopefully is going to be useful for you guys. So I'd really appreciate all of the love possible on this video. And do, of course, subscribe if you want more videos like this in the future to narrow down your own chip strategies. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to answer anything you guys have to ask around the blanks, the doubles, and also chip strategy as well. But let's keep moving with the video. You see, if you have players blanking in game week 29, well, you're not going to want to have these players in your squad. You don't want players without fixtures playing in game week 29. You know, your team will be incomplete. You may only be able to field 8, 9, 10 players, and that's not quite good enough. However, those very same players that you don't want in game week 29, you will want in game week 33, because the very same teams who are blanking in 29 will be doubling in 33. So we've got this transitional period for your squad between game week 29 and 33, where there will be a specific set of players that you don't want in game week 29, and those very same players you will want in game week 33. So you're going to have 4 game weeks to add those players to your squad. Now, the most likely scenario is, like we kind of mentioned earlier about the fixture predictions, Newcastle and Crystal Palace will blank in 29 and obviously play twice in 33, and Aston Villa and Liverpool will blank in 29 and double in 33. That is the most likely scenario. So what I'm saying is, in game week 29, you're going to want to minimize in this example, you're going to want to minimize the amount of players you have from Newcastle, Palace, Villa and Liverpool, but then maximize your players from those very same teams in game week 33. And you only have 4 game weeks to make that transition from very few Newcastle, Palace, Aston Villa, Liverpool players to as many Newcastle, Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Liverpool players as possible. And that is where chips are going to come into play. And we've got the same situation here with 34 and 36, but with a smaller transitional period. The players you don't want to have in game week 34 will be the very same players you do want to have in game week 36. And given that you will only have 2 game weeks to transition between 2 very different squads, a chip is really going to need to be used here. Even using free transfers alone, it is going to be very difficult to transition between game week 34 and 36 with trying to get an entirely different squad. Essentially, you're really going to want to have as few blank game week players in 34 as possible, but in the big double game week 36, which should be the biggest double game week of the season, you're going to want to have a lot of players from those very same teams. So this is where chip strategy comes into it. This is what we need to start thinking about next, having some early thoughts on that. But first of all, just a couple more notes. So as we know, Everton versus Liverpool was postponed earlier on in the season, and therefore that needs to fit in somewhere. And the most likely places would be in game week 24 or game week 25, because that is where we have UEFA UEFA playoffs for the various competitions, and neither Everton nor Liverpool are in any of these European playoff games. Because it is an earlier stage in the European competitions as well, it is more likely that the Premier League will be happy to schedule fixtures at the same time as Champions League games are going on. For the later stages in the tournament, there would only be Premier League games scheduled at the same time as Champions League fixtures in the late stages in emergency situations. So it's very, very unlikely that that's going to happen. But in the earlier stages of the competitions, playoff stages of these European competitions, I think it's going to be fine to reschedule Everton versus Liverpool into one of game week 24 or 25. We are still waiting for an announcement on that one to get the verified game week where that's going to happen. But as you can see, if it's in game week 24, it would take place between the 11th and 13th of February, which would still technically be within game week 24, although it would also be like a couple of weeks after the first fixtures in game week 24. So you can have a long, if Liverpool and Everton were to double in game week 24, you would have a very long wait between the first game week 24 fixtures and the final game week 24 fixtures. Game week 25 is a little bit more straightforward. The fixture would just be rescheduled into the midweek slot of game week 25. So that's where that additional mini double game week would occur within game week 24 or game week 25. And the final possible double game week would be within game week 37. I think this is going to be more of an emergency double game week that could take place around the same time as the Europa League final. It could happen the day before, for example, maybe even a couple of days before the Europa League final. So this is technically a free slot for any team that doesn't reach the Europa League final, and that can only be Manchester United or Tottenham Hotspur. So if there is a scenario where another game gets randomly postponed, I think it's most likely that it would be rescheduled into game week 37. So that is the final notes that I think is worth speaking about. All you need to know, guys, is game week 29 and 34, they're going to be blanks. Game week 34 will be the bigger one. Game week 33 would be a medium-sized double game week, and game week 36 is going to be your biggest double game week of the season. We have a rough idea who will be blanking in 29 and doubling in 33, but as to who will be blanking in 34 and doubling in 36, right now we don't really have a clue. So we can make estimates, but we will likely be so far from the truth, it's not really worth thinking about too much at this moment. But with the information we do have, we can start to think about chip strategies. And I think there is one chip strategy that seems to be, I don't know, the most obvious to me right now. So let's assume you have all chips remaining, and then we can work backwards from there. I think game week 24 or 25 are going to be your triple captain weeks. That is the game weeks in which Salah will have a double game week in which it will include the Everton fixture. We don't know exactly when yet, but the great thing about the triple captain chip is you can use it kind of on a whim. It's not really a chip that requires a lot of planning, but if Liverpool were to double in 24, they would have away games against Bournemouth and Everton. It's okay, you know, it's not too bad. Game week 25 is a little bit better because they would have a home game against Wolves and then that away game against Everton. It's going to be one of those two. So that's really, really good. I think that is pretty straightforward for your triple captain chip. Use it in a smaller double game week with a very important team doubling, which is Liverpool and Mo Salah. That brings us to the wild card, and my initial instinct is that it will work pretty well in game week 30. So after game week 30, we will have the EFL Cup final will be done. We will know exactly who will be blanking and doubling in game week 34 and game week 36 because the FA Cup quarterfinals will have passed. So we'll know the results. We'll know who's in the semi-finals, and that will give us a lot of information. And it's also directly after an international break. So if there's any injuries or anything like that, any surprises during the international break or during the FA Cup quarterfinals, we can react to that. If there's any big injuries, we can react to that with our wildcards in game week 30. So that is a provisional provisional place for a wild card. I think this is probably going to work for 90% of people, but there is a possibility that if you have a lot of free transfers knocking around and you think you can navigate the Game Week 29 blank game week without the use of a wild card, then you might actually be able to save your wild card all the way until Game Week 35 actually. But I think I like it more in Game Week 30 on initial examination, but we still have so much information to come, guys, so nothing is final in this video when it comes to chip strategy. Game Week 30 is also very useful for a wild card because it allows you to dead end your team into Game Week 29. You know, for example, say Liverpool and Newcastle reach the EFL Cup final and blank in Game Week 29. That will allow you to essentially sell all of your Liverpool and Newcastle players in Game Week 29 and bring them back immediately in Game Week 30 using your wild card. So you can start removing some of those players ready for the blank, and then in Game Week 30, bring them back again. You've transitioned between one team in Game Week 29, which contains very few Liverpool, Newcastle players, and very many Liverpool and Newcastle players in Game Week 30. And that's going to be particularly good because we do have a double in 33. So, assistant manager chip. I think the best time to use the assistant manager chip is going to be in Game Week 31 because you're going to get Game Week 31, normal game week, Game Week 32, normal game week, and Game Week 33, which will be a double game week for those teams who blanked in Game Week 29. So this could be pretty good. This could be really, really good. In fact, I like the look of this. So, yes, assistant manager, initial thoughts. We are way too early to be deciding exactly who you should be using your assistant manager chip on, which manager you should be picking. But two names stand out based on current information, and they are Arne Slot at Liverpool and Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace. And the reason is both of those teams are very likely to blank in 29 and therefore double in 33, and they have pretty good scenarios. So Liverpool are top of the league. They are going to just hopefully win all of their games between Game Week 31 and 33. You get that extra fixture, so 4 fixtures for your assistant manager instead of the usual 3, which is nice. And obviously Liverpool are a top team. Nice, safe options. Oliver Glasner is a little riskier, and looking at the current league table, which is going to change between now and Game Week 31, Oliver Glasner could work pretty well here as well because currently he plays all teams 5 or more places above Crystal Palace in the Premier League table. Let's see what it looks like at Game Week 31. But right now, he plays a lot of teams above him in the table. And that's going to be good for those extra points. Now, because you get so many more additional points for picking a manager of a team who is lower down in the table, a Crystal Palace in this, if the table stays the same way it is, you know, Crystal Palace in 4 games, they only need to win 1 and draw 1, and they'll get the same amount of win and draw points as Liverpool would do if they were to win 4 out of 4 games during that period. So I don't want to make this video about the assistant manager chips, but I just wanted to give some initial, very, very, very early rough ideas on when to use the assistant manager chip and who to use it on. Just rough ideas at this point, guys. I really don't want you to think anything in this video is final, but I think it is a very good time to start thinking roughly when we're going to use our chips. So next up, the free hit. Biggest blank of the season will be in Game Week 34. You will have a minimum of 12 teams to choose from for your free hit team, which I think is good enough. In all likeliness, we'll have even more teams to choose from. So just pick the best possible team in Game Week 34 using your free hit chip, and you don't need to worry about any team who blank. Those teams that blank will be doubling in 36. The biggest double game week of the season, which will create a nice bench boost opportunity. So bench boost 36 would work very, very well because hopefully by using your wild card in 30, you've picked a lot of players because you'll have this information. You can pick a lot of players who blank in 34 and play in 36 twice. You can pick a load of those players in your Game Week 30 wildcard and use your free transfers between Game Week 30 and 36 to make any minor adjustments during that interim to make sure you are set up for a really, really nice bench boost team for the biggest double game week of the season, making sure you have plenty of those double game week players ready to boost on your bench. So that is where I am at right now with my thinking. I think there are definitely going to be other options here. For example, you could maybe free hit in game week 29 and then wildcard in game week, well, I guess you'd have to wildcard in game week 35. So that's definitely a possibility. Some people will prefer to play the assistant manager chip a little bit earlier in the game week 24 to 26, 27 kind of period. I'm not sure I like that as much, but I admire the possibility. You could potentially use your assistant manager chip for the game week 36 double as well. You could play it for game week 36, 37, 38, for example. That could potentially work out, but the possibilities really are endless, and I don't think there is one strategy that is going to work for everyone. And right now, we don't exactly have enough information to know for sure. So this is just all initial instincts, initial kind of rough ideas on when chips should be used in theory based on current information. And yeah, I like the look of this strategy right now. But as weeks go by, guys, what we're going to do is we are going to update this graphic that we see on screen. We're going to be far more specific, tell you guys exactly who is going to be doubling, who is going to be blanking, and we'll be making more predictions even before we have definitive information. So, guys, make sure you do stay tuned to the channel, and hopefully we're going to give you loads more information on exactly when to use your chips, everything you need to know for the rest of the FPL season. This is something I love to do. I love figuring out what goes where, all of the moving parts, the likeliness of different scenarios. And I don't really like to boast on this channel very much, but I think I'm quite good at it. I think one of the few things I am good at with this FPL channel, I suppose, is figuring out where fixtures are going to go and trying to present that in a way where you guys can very easily understand it yourself. So plenty of more of that to come. But regardless, guys, this video did take a couple of days to put together. So if you wouldn't mind dropping a like on the video, that would be massively, massively appreciated. I'm doing my best out here, guys, to make sure you have all the information available. And if you haven't subscribed and you want to make sure you have all of the information as things start to narrow down, become more defined, become more certain, make sure you are subscribed, because we are going to continue to update you in the coming weeks as we gain more information and start making predictions on doubles, blanks, with even more accuracy, which I can't wait for. I really can't. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, as I say. If you want to check out the buy, sell, keep, avoid video we uploaded a couple of days ago, please do go ahead and check that out for your transfer tips. And I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.